is the furthest out we've gone since the Apollo program. Time for me to hand it over to my fellow astronaut, Jonathan Serry, who loves getting into this stuff. He's like a kid in a man's body talking about this. But man, oh man, John, this is really just stunning to watch, you know?
Yeah, it was thrilling to watch. This morning, billionaire entrepreneur Jared Isaacman became the first private citizen to step outside an orbiting spacecraft. Listen.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, Earth sure looks like a perfect world.
You could hear the cheers from all of the SpaceX engineers watching outside the mission control room. Isaacman paid SpaceX an undisclosed amount of money to send him and 3 other private astronauts into space. But this is no tourist joyride. The crew are conducting real science and testing SpaceX's new EVA suits for the very first time in the vacuum of space. After Isaacman returned to the capsule, Sarah Gillis stepped outside. She is a SpaceX engineer who oversees astronaut training for the company, but this is her first trip to space. Because the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft has no airlock, the cabin had to be depressurized, and all 4 private astronauts were wearing SpaceX's new EVA suits. The company hopes to one day use these spacesuits for extended human stays on the Moon and Mars.
This pace of development that we get to do at SpaceX is very much like the pace of development that was required back in the early Apollo days. We're getting a chance to do that again, where we're really starting to push frontiers with the private sector and learning new things that we would not be able to learn by staying in the risk-free environment of here on Earth.
And Neil, the Polaris Dawn mission, which launched on Tuesday, is expected to last approximately 5 days. Over the weekend, it will return to Earth, splashing down in the Atlantic or somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico, depending on weather. Neil?
Just amazing. Jonathan, there is something special about this elliptical orbit, too. I touched on it, but the furthest we've seen humans go since the Apollo program, right?
Yeah, they reduced the altitude for the spacewalk, but at peak, they were about 870 miles out. That's the furthest humans have been since the Apollo moon missions. And because all of the members of those Apollo missions were men, and now there are women on this flight, to borrow a phrase from Captain Kirk, you can say that the Polaris Dawn mission has boldly gone where no woman has gone before.
I see what you did there, fellow astronaut. You're the best, Jonathan. Thank you very much. Jonathan's like a big kid. You know he's loving this, and he should. It is a big deal. A lot of you also say, Neil, you're not an astronaut. Well, just to bring you up to speed, the late Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, gave me a pin. That qualified me to be an astronaut. In fact, I wore it to his funeral, which I was very proud to be one of the eulogists, and I commented on that pin. And some of the astronauts had to remind me at that event, you know, Neil, that does not make you an astronaut. And I had to tell them, prove it. So there you go.